Okay. Ian Tompkins, candidate for City Council. Tell us why you think you should be elected.
I think I should be elected to the Fall River City Council because I'm a new young in blood. I was born and raised in Fall River. I went out to pharmacy school, so I got a pretty good quality education, as well as my quality education here in Fall River. And I was inspired last year or the year before by the Bernie Sanders run for president, and I decided to get involved in local politics as a way to help improve our local economy, as well as hopefully eventually the economy of the state at large and the country. That's where I'm at.
All right. One of the current complaints about the council is sort of the infighting amongst the members, the length of the meetings, all that kind of thing. Certainly, you'd only be one member, but what do you think you could do to make the council run a little smoother?
I think I want to work with whoever ends up being mayor. I think the important thing is to make sure that what's happening is best for Fall River. I know that some of the council members seem to have some kind of personal grudge against Jazel, and other council members just don't like his policy. But there's a lot of infighting in the council, and I think they need to figure out how to compromise instead of continuing to further the current political divide that we see in the country and in our city itself. So we need to find mutual ground and kind of consolidate on issues, because we can't just fight on every single thing. The city's moving nowhere if we do that.
So you decided you're, a young person that went away to school and decided to stay here in Fall River. Do you think that Fall River has, a lot of people complain about a negative image about the city. Do you think that it's warranted, and what would you do to sort of fix that?
Fall River certainly is perceived very negatively. A lot of the negativeness in Fall River is often what's highlighted, but there's a lot of also beauty that Fall River has. It has a very broad, spacious bioreserve. It's got great land if you go outside of the inner city. The problem with Fall River is that we've kind of neglected parts of the inner city, and we need to figure out a way to really improve the inner city again and make it more vibrant. That way, we've got this beautiful north end, and we can connect that to the beautiful inner city. We need to improve the whole thing.
What do you consider to be the biggest problem facing the city right now?
The biggest problem currently facing the city? There's a lot of big problems facing the city. I think one of the biggest problems is that we're an underfunded city. We've barely funded most of our public departments, especially our education department, and that's why we're seeing education in such a strain in Fall River. So my primary target is to try to improve our educational department. Some of it through restructuring, but some of it through getting together with our other state representatives and our other city council members to try to lobby the state for more funding here, and as well as for other poor and underperforming cities in the state.
So you don't feel that Fall River gets its fair share of state funding at this point?
Well, it gets its fair share of state funding, but the problem is that unlike wealthier cities, we can't also then pull tax revenue from our residents because we don't have wealthy residents in Fall River. Or the median income in Fall River is much lower than the median income in other parts of the state where they're funding their education at 110, 120% and beyond. And that 100% level isn't really where education should be. That's a kind of an underestimate for what that state helps fund. And we really need to figure out a way to improve that and get more education funding, especially in the cities that are barely able to stay on top of their funding like other cities are.
So do you have any ideas on how to generate more tax revenue or kind of bring in more of that funding at the state level?
So bringing in more of the funding at the state level, I think the best thing to do would be to start forming multiple town coalitions. So we need to work with other towns like New Bedford and Springfield and kind of start having that internal communication and then kind of cooperatively lobbying the state. But internally, if we had to increase, we're limited by Proposition 2.5, so that's why we've lately been increasing taxes by 2.5% roughly each year. And I know we had several years back where we weren't increasing taxes for a while, probably partly because there's such an economic strain in Fall River that residents wouldn't be able to handle that, and partly because management in the city. But if we do need to raise taxes in Fall River, I think that what we need to target is the wealthier or rent-seeking parts of the city. So landlords. My belief is that landlords can't pass rent onto their residents because they already should be charging as much as they can get from them. And so I think taxing landlords is the way to go. I myself am a landlord, so that's how I feel it's operated.
Are there any issues that you feel the current city council has either neglected or not spent enough time on?
There are some basic things that I think the council kind of neglects. And then there are some larger issues that the council neglects. One of the things that the council blatantly neglected a few months ago was the Quecksham River Rail Trail that they've created this fiasco over. They were handed, a proposal from the mayor, and nobody decided to read it, and they passed it, and so that was pretty clear neglect. And now we have either a potential lawsuit from the mill owner for taking away a variance, or we've got a potential lawsuit from the state because we might allow this road over this rail trail that we took state funding to fund. So I think that there is definitely some neglect on the part of the council in their actions. But in terms of the city, what they're neglecting, I feel they're definitely neglecting the inner city and not focusing enough funding on community development. They're not focusing enough resources on how to restructure our departments so that they can be more effective in the way that they run. That's what I think.
Is public safety an issue? Do you feel the city is safe, or?
I feel public safety is an issue. I feel pretty safe in the city, in the parts where I live, but there are definitely parts of the city that are less safe. And I feel that the way to fix that is that we need to make our residents feel safer around the police. They need to feel like the police are something they can go to. So I want to have more community policing where you're able to feel that presence of the police, but also that the police are there to help, not to harm you. So I want the police to be introducing themselves to the residents and giving them that feel-good feeling that there's someone they can count on, and not someone to run away when they see them coming so that they don't get a ticket, or so that they don't. There's a lot of fear from the police department in general, not just in Fall River, but in general across the country, and I feel like we need to start changing that somewhere.
So if that's a general based fear, how do you change that? How do you change the perception of Fall River police if you think people are more captured by the general fear that's created more nationally?
So that's why I'm saying what we need to do is we need to create programs where there's community outreach by the police and fire department, where they're going out to the community members and just introducing themselves, really getting to know them on a personal level, so you feel you have a personal relationship with the police department, and less of a transactional relationship, which turns into that fearful relationship. And then, someday people will be able to say, well, our police department's not like the rest of the country. We have a great police department in Fall River. I feel like I can walk up to my policeman and ask him, come over. I saw this guy dealing drugs the other day, and keep an eye out for that. And that'll help to mitigate some of the problems we're seeing in Fall River.
One of the more significant functions of the council is budgetary. The annual review, and that comes at the end of the fiscal year in advance of the next one. So what kind of experience do you have with budgets, and how familiar are you with the current fiscal year budget?
My budgeting experience is still fairly limited. I just became a landlord a year ago, and that's probably been my biggest budgeting experience so far. I've got my 3-family home that I learned how to budget doing multiple projects with my own income and other things, and how to set spending so that we can tackle multiple projects at once. But that's, again, a very small scale income compared to the size of a city. So I definitely don't have large company management experience, which I feel would be a big indicator of somebody having qualifications to run a city. But I don't know if anybody else on the city council has experience running, other than, I know Sean Kadim is a city administrator, but other than him, I don't know if anybody else has large scale budget management experience.
But would you feel comfortable being able to review the budget?
Oh, absolutely. I certainly feel comfortable looking at budgets and line items. I just don't have prior experience
Sure.
doing so.
All right. Any closing thoughts you want to share?
Closing thoughts. While Fall River has a very negative image, again, I see that Fall River has a bright future, and that's why I've decided to stay in Fall River. I had very, positive prospects that I just moved up to Boston. I could have had an easier job and an easier life, but I've decided to stay in Fall River because I think it has a bright future, and I want to help move Fall River along to that bright future.
All right. Thank you very much.